Recently, I've been binging through some of Nuxie Boy's older content, and more specifically, his series on flexes in anime. The moments when someone comes out and they're so confident, so powerful that they casually shut down the people around them with zero effort. You see these massive differences in powers that make everyone understand that there was never a competition in the first place. And I thought that might be something to talk about while looking at Inuyasha. And I just want to be clear here, there's a difference between badass moments and flexes. For example, if we look at something like Dragon Ball Z, an easy example that most people might be able to understand is in the Saiyan arc, we have Vegeta and Nappa showing up, and we have badass moments with Goku which go in very different ways. There are two moments that really stand out to me in this battle. Towards the end, we have that famous moment where Goku and Vegeta have their beam struggle, the Kamehameha versus the Gallic Gun, and Goku is barely holding out, but then he uses the Kaioken to overpower Vegeta. Totally badass. But I wouldn't really say that's a flex. Pulling a clutch win in a very close fight is cool, but it could have gone either way, and really it didn't make that much of a difference in the fight overall. A lot of times, but not always, the protagonist can't really have flex moments against the main antagonist, because if they were that much stronger, the conflict wouldn't have mattered to begin with. But you can see these happening from time to time either with minor villains or especially after time skips. On the other hand, in the Saiyan arc, we have Nappa. Earlier, Nappa had been absolutely destroying everyone, but then Goku shows up and lays him out, literally breaking his back without a sweat. And here's the big difference between badass and flex moments. All flex moments are badass, but not all badass moments are flexes. It comes down to the level of dominance and presence that the instance carries. And that's why while Inuyasha beating Ryukotse with the backlash wave was incredibly badass, it was fucking awesome, I wouldn't really say it's a flex, you know? So specifically today, I want to talk about 3 characters in Inuyasha and a couple moments for each of them that really just show them flexing on everyone around them. There is a moment in particular that I'm going to be starting with, where I saw this and I was like, damn, this is a perfect example of a flex. I would love to talk about this more. You see, I was rewatching the Band of Seven arc recently, and my dudes, motherfucking Bonkotsu. Let's talk about a few of my favorite flexes that this guy gave us. And yes, we'll start with the one that inspired this video. There's this moment when Renkotsu's about to betray Bonkotsu. He sneaks up behind him, and now he has 3 jewel shards. However, he knows Bonkotsu has 4 jewel shards within himself and a few more in his halberd Banryu. So he needs to act quickly before Bonkotsu can get to his weapon. He thinks they're on relatively even footing without the weapon involved. So dude walks up, he's just about to strike, and then Bonkotsu, without flinching, jabs him in the neck with 2 fingers and pulls out the jewel shards without even looking back. Then telling him that for a smart guy, he's kinda stupid because he's always planning and never acting. Renkotsu staggers back in shock, saying that they're the same. Both of them are just using jewel shards to become the most powerful. They're getting ready to fight, and Bonkotsu throws back the 2 jewel shards that he just took from Renkotsu. Not only that, he looks at him and says, "Don't worry, I won't even use Banryu." Meaning, he's giving up the jewel shard advantage that he just took, and he's choosing not to use his weapon, the one thing that Renkotsu thought tipped the scales. So now we have an armed Renkotsu with 3 jewel shards and an unarmed Bonkotsu with 4. Bonkotsu dodges every single one of Renkotsu's shots with little trouble and jumps right in front of him, scaring him and knocking him to the ground, saying his aim wasn't that good and now it even seems like his balance is failing him too. And after insulting him like that, he demands that he gets back up so he can be executed. Renkotsu instead jumps back and lights Bonkotsu on fire, and as Bonkotsu stands in the flames, he throws pins into Renkotsu, knocking out one of his jewel shards. Renkotsu falls back to the ground and asks how they're different. And before even answering, Bonkotsu rips out the last 2 jewel shards from Renkotsu's neck and just says it's because he would never betray his friends. This whole battle shows Bonkotsu to be miles ahead of Renkotsu when it comes to power. He really doesn't even have to try and still wins this fight so easily. But it also sets him on a moral high ground that demonstrates that everything Renkotsu did up until this point is now meaningless. And you will often see these added traits to a lot of flex moments that make them more than just badass. Not only is he stronger, he also has the moral victory as well. Well before this, though, is another of Bonkotsu's moments which I always adored. The band is getting back together, he still doesn't have Banryu yet, and as the other members of the Band of Seven take out the guards outside of a fortress, Banryu heads inside by himself. We see this warlord saying there's nothing to worry about because they could never make it inside, and instantly Bonkotsu slides open the door, asking if they received his letter. The warlord asks what happened to the guards, completely in panic, and then we get this shot of bodies dangling from the ceiling, and Bonkotsu laughing it off, saying he thinks they're all a bit hung up right now. Completely panicked, the warlord decides to gift back Banryu to Bonkotsu, and is shocked when Bonkotsu manages to pick it up with one hand because it took 3 strong men to carry it into the fortress together. Bonkotsu thanks the warlord for polishing Banryu. The warlord offers him a job, hoping that it allows him to be spared. However, Bonkotsu just asks, "Didn't you read my letter? I asked you to wash your neck," and then cuts off his head. Fucking savage. Now, the next character I wanted to take a look at is obviously Sesshomaru, and with him, we have 2 moments in particular that I wanted to talk about today. Firstly, Tokijin. He commissions Kaijimbo to make this blade specifically because he wanted a weapon made from the demon who broke Tessaiga so that he could use it against Inuyasha, which, bro, pretty petty. I'm here for it. So Kaijimbo gets to work on it, and upon completing it, it completely possesses him. And even once Kaijimbo is killed, the blade plunges itself into the ground and sets up a barrier that totally eradicates anything that even comes close to it. Inuyasha, Totosai, and the rest are all trying to figure out what to do about this, and then Sesshomaru walks up, grabs it with 0 hesitation, 0 effort, and takes it for himself. Honestly, a lot of Sesshomaru's flexes tend to happen pretty quickly. They're minor scenes which are just very heavy. He isn't really one to make a big deal about things or to sit on a moment. As soon as he grabs the sword, it's just kind of like, yeah, of course it didn't melt me away. I'm motherfucking Sesshomaru. Let's get the fight going already. And then we have his battle with the monks who are trying to take Rin. They have this famous monk and his team doing this massive group attack on him, only for him not to be phased at all. Then they put him in this binding exorcism circle thingo, and for once, Sesshomaru seems almost bothered. He begins a mini transformation and bursts through the seal, knocking all of the monks to their knees and mentally breaking the leader of the group. Which, yeah, obviously when you have Sesshomaru fighting a bunch of humans, even if they're monks, the power difference is kinda obvious. It's kinda like how Mike Tyson can't really flex on a preschool girl in a boxing ring. The one being flexed on typically needs to have a feeling like they could have a chance going into it. But what really counts as the flex in this situation is that he leaves without killing any of them and having Rin willingly follow him. This isn't a flex because he overpowered them, it's a flex because he defied their views on demons being these savage, murderous things, and more specifically to this case, it showed them that he wasn't someone who was dangerous to Rin, and they were the ones who were in the wrong. And finally, let's talk about Naraku. Naraku's entire character is about him fucking with people because he can. Something pretty in line with the flex lifestyle. However, there are 2 moments which just, bro, you didn't have to do that. Firstly, we have Sango's introduction. Naraku is chill, living a life where he's taking the form of a prince in a castle, and then he orders all of the demon slayers to come to this castle and defeat a giant spider demon, only to take control of Kohaku and force him to wipe out the rest of his family and friends, then sending a horde of demons to wipe out their village, killing everyone who remained behind. Literally savaging them. But then one of the slayers manages to survive, being Sango. So naturally, he manages to pin the blame on Inuyasha, and when Sango figures this out, he revives her brother and continually uses him to keep manipulating her. This man went so extra into ruining the demon slayers that he wouldn't even let death stop them from being used as tools. We've seen the power flexes of Bonkotsu, the moral flexes of Sesshomaru, and then we have the scheming flexes of Naraku, completely controlling these people and making plans to keep using them as his playthings. And speaking of his playthings, Kagura. More specifically, and I know you know where this is going, I'm sorry, but we have her death. Kagura spent her whole character arc trying to betray Naraku and gain freedom. However, because he held her heart, he could kill her whenever he wanted, or he could just reabsorb her. He had essentially a billion ways to kill her, and there was nothing she could really do about it. But that leads us to the moment where they come face to face in the final act. He does give her her freedom, only to pierce her and fill her with miasma instantly before she could even register that she had her heart back. He really didn't have to fuck with her like this. Like I said, squish her heart, absorb her, poison her in general. The only reason he gave her her heart, the only reason he gave her her freedom, was specifically to give her hope and take it away immediately, demonstrating that even if she got her wish, he was still going to control her fate. But yeah, these are some of the biggest flexes in Inuyasha. Shout out to the people in the Discord for helping me think of moments. And of course, a shout out to Nuxtaku for his biggest flexes in anime series. You guys can check those out on his channel, or you can check out the video I did with Nux talking about Fairy Tail almost a year ago now. If you have other flex moments, not particularly badass ones, but flex moments that you'd like to see me talk about in the future, let me know in the comments down below. But for now, I want to thank you all so much for watching. Here is your chance to flex on that like button and subscribe for more content in the future. And if you do want to support the channel a little bit extra, you can check out the link in the description if you would like to help me out on Patreon. As always, a big thank you goes out to our patrons, with our Dai Yokai Iffy Babes and Jacob Wiley, our Yokai Amelia Hellman, Anel Cruz, Janice Not Janice, and Lucifina Akuma, and our Hanyo Anthony Hogan, Eli Kanem, Kiwi Dog, Love the Kiwi, Michael Grayco, Mochi Num Num, Nega Kitty, Samantha Olsen, Savage Camel, Simon Electric again, Suki Neko, and Ziv. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, remember to stay excellent.